Welcome to A Time to Thrill. I'm your host, Aime Austin. It is June, and this month we are featuring bestselling author Tamara Gill. So, I love Tam. I should tell you that Tam is Australian. I don't know if that makes a difference, but the best thing about Tam is actually she's a brilliant author. I'll tell you two things. One, a long, long time ago, we authors can put their books up on a popular review site called NetGalley, and for complicated reasons, I was monitoring her reviews, and I don't even remember which book this was that she had put up on NetGalley for reader review, but readers loved her books way more than they ever loved mine because I mainly monitored my own books. But she had this slot on NetGalley, and I was authorizing people to review her book, and they all loved it. Readers gushed. There were like tons of 5 stars. They couldn't get enough of Tam's books. At that time, those were historical time travel. Then the other thing I'll tell you about Tam is one day my son was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8. I don't know. This is years ago. And we were talking about Australian and New Zealand accents. And I was telling him about this time I was flying on Air New Zealand, and the guy kept saying 10, but it sounded like tin. And it took me like a good minute to figure out what he was talking about. Maybe it was 10 degrees, who knows. Anyway, so one day I called or texted Tam, and I was like, could you do me this favor? Could you record, I don't even remember what she recorded, your voice for my son so he could hear the different accents. And so, like, she texted me back this recording of her and her kids saying whatever it was they said. It was the sweetest thing because my son really loved it. He loved the idea that people had different accents and that I knew people who had different accents. I don't know. That's back when I was a superstar, so maybe he was more like 6. And so I've known Tamara, oh my God. I met her at the beginning of my writing career. My first book and her first book were published by a romance publisher. Actually, it was a romance imprint. The publisher, I think, was sold, I don't know, merged with another huge New York publisher. And the imprint is long defunct. A lot of romance imprints have come and go. And that's how I met her back then. And she's the best. So without further ado, Tamara Gill. Hi, and welcome to A Time to Thrill. This month, I'm so excited to interview the amazing historical author, Tamara Gill. Hi, Tam.
Hello, how you going?
Oh, also, Tamara's from Australia. I don't know why I'm saying that. You'll hear this with the accent. So we met in, I want to say, when was that? 2012, 2011?
It's
Something like that.
6 years ago, isn't it? And I was thinking of that this morning. I was thinking like how we formed our little alliance so many years ago, known each other for so long. But yeah, it would have been easily 2012, I think.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so so for a little background, we started out more or less with the same publisher that has gone through a lot of iteration and is now defunct. Back in, I think I signed the contract, I want to say in 2011, and my first book was 2012. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I don't know. When did your first book come out?
So I originally published some little short novellas with Noble Romance,
Okay.
if you can remember them.
Yes.
Um, and then I gave one to Decadent Romance.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the Crimson, which was
Yes.
how we met.
Yes.
And
Okay. So
that was,
you've
I think 2010 was when I first published, like they were called Naughty Nibbles.
okay.
Yeah, and that was my first sort of step into the publishing world.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions. The first one is what okay. The one I ask everybody because it's such a bold move, but what made you want to start writing and publishing?
It was really, I started late, so I had a 2-year-old son, and I'd come out of work where we moved back into the country area in our state because we were
Hmm.
living in Adelaide, which is like the capital city,
Right.
and I was looking for a hobby, so I was always in the shops, like I was always like walking around Kmart, which I think is like Walmart over there, or sort of that sort of store,
Right.
and I saw a book, a Stephanie Lawrence book, but I didn't know that at the time, and I just saw the cover with this beautiful gown on the front. And I thought, oh, that looks really interesting. And I picked it up and I saw the blurb and I thought, oh, well, it's an historical. Like I had no idea. Um,
Hmm.
and I took it home and I just devoured it. And I was so shocked because I was like, do they do this in this time period? And I was having to look up things like I didn't know what a hackney cab was, and I had to look that up. And it was totally green, and I fell in love with it, and I just started devouring. And then that sort of like I started reading romance all the time,
Hmm.
and then I found Karen Marie Moaning, and she wrote time travel, and I loved that. And then I started having like ideas of a Regency time travel in my head of my own book. And I was sitting with my husband one night, and I said to him in the lounge room, because he was an interstate truck driver, so
Hmm.
we only saw him 1 or 2 times a week.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to write a book. And he turned to me and he was like, what sort of book? I said, like a novel. I'm going to write a book. And he goes, what, really? And I said, yeah, I've got this idea for a book and I reckon I can do it. And he was like, well, go on then. And I did. And so I wrote that night some of the first pages of A Stolen Season, which
Hmm.
is, has been with I don't know, like a boutique publisher, but I got my rights back to that one, and now it's I self-published that one as well. But that was the first book. But looking back, I definitely in school, I remember when I've heard other authors ask this question of whether you had any inkling that you might have liked writing. And
Right.
back in school, I used to, and this is going back into year 2 and 3, I used to write little snippet plays, like little tiny little plays. And then I'd
Hmm.
make all my classmates act them out in the drama room. I remember that. And I thought, maybe it was always there and I just sort of forgot, and life got in the way and things. And yeah, and it wasn't until I was sort of really looking for something because I'd been with people and then all of a sudden I was with little babies, and
Oh, yeah.
I was sort of like, what am I going to do? I got to do something. I'm at home. I'm own. Hubby's not home. I've got little babies that don't have conversations with you, really.
Not really.
No. And I was bored. We were back in a country town. I didn't have any friends, and I was like, what am I going to do? And that's how I sort of fell back into reading, and then I fell back in and I started writing, and that was when I was like, oh yeah, I do love this. And I think, yeah, it was always there, but I'd forgotten it for a long, long time. And
So, can
that
I ask you about historical? Okay, so in my head, okay, you've written a lot of books since I've known you, but in my head, you have picked the two hardest genres to write in, historical and time travel. To me, that seems okay, my head would explode. Like, it's enough for me to sit down and write a book that takes place now and here.
yes.
And that's a lot. But so if you didn't start out with that whole, I don't know, Regency background, what possessed you to do something
I
that
know.
seems, to be honest, really difficult?
Okay, so you know what? The honest answer is really pathetic and a bit stupid. But I loved the dresses, like the Empire style gowns that they wore. Like the little blue. They hold the boob and then they drop. Um,
Yes.
you'd have seen them in Bridgerton all the time. Those little tiny little sleeves, and I loved it. And I loved how there was more rules between the men and the women. Like I really
Hmm.
liked. Um, that they were, sort of inhibited to being able to be really themselves or say what they wanted and what they thought. And then when you add the time travel element, and then you've got like this, I always have usually women that go back in time. So and my all my characters, no matter what, whether it's just a plain Regency or it's a time travel, the women they're pretty vocal and strong
Hmm.
characters. So then when you throw that, you know, 21st century woman back in time to the place, that she's got to watch her P's and Q's and things like that. I just love that. And but honestly, it was the dresses that I loved this book with this gown. I wanted one. Like I wanted a book with that gown on my cover. That
Okay.
is really what. Yeah, I mean,
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough. It is what.
yeah, well, I really wanted one like that, and I loved reading it. Like I wanted to make my own heroines have those sorts of stories and stuff, but a bit spicier than Jane Austen. Like I didn't.
That's true.
I wanted them to be a bit spicier than that.
Okay, so I struggle with time travel.
Yes.
In your books, okay, let me go back. I will skip time travel because I don't quite get it. So, do you, in your books, do you end up doing a lot of research on the historical part?
I do. Like I've done medieval, so like I was an absolute expert on anything like garderobes and anything that had to do with sort of how they lived. Obviously medieval, they didn't bathe very often, and my heroine, um, she obviously bathes way more than what they would have in that time. And but like you make jokes of things like that, like the staff would be looking at them like, what are you wasting all this water for? Or you know um in the time period that she lived, there was no mirrors, but they used to have looking bowls where they were filled with water. You used to like see your reflection, like that's how that you used to be able to look at
Ah,
yourself. And then
okay.
obviously, yeah, the garderobes and things like that, and how they used to, there's a scene in that medieval book where she is dyeing clothing, and she has no idea that they're using urine for that, and she, so you can like put lots of little historical things that you learn into the books, which make it quite funny for someone of the 21st century would be like horrified that
Uh,
that you're playing around in Wii and things like that. But with my Scottish time travels, I incorporated a lot of clan history in those three books.
mhm,
So it's based on the MacLeod clan and a few other different clans that they were always fighting with, and especially book three, which is sort of like a prequel. It goes back to how the family got, because they're able to see and pull people from the future.
right.
And then you might have heard of the fairy flag in um, Dunvegan Castle, I think it is.
Mhm.
And That's all in that. I pulled all those sort of history tidbits into the book to make that make sense. Um, and I get readers emailing me going, "Oh, I can't believe you put that in. It's so amazing!" And like I get people email me and they're like, "I'm a McLeod and this is fantastic."
Wow, okay.
But with my regencies, they're completely just made up. I don't use any historical events other than it's just the Regency period and all the time, like all the restrictions that men and women had to live by. So she,
Right.
um, um, and in that series, I actually have their time traveling archaeologists. So the family that go back, like the girl that goes back originally, her father had created this like a time machine, but I never go into the detail of that. It's
Okay,
just
that's the part I always wondered about because time travel obviously, well, bends the space-time continuum,
it does, yeah.
and when I ever have to think about those kinds of things, I get stuck in some kind of loop of, well, the effect changing the future or changing the past.
Yes.
Um, do you just skip over that, and then do people ask you about it?
I have to be really careful, because in the Stolen Season series, which I finished up the last two books of that last year, she does. They leave something in the past, which is if it's found that, and then is found, that had been in the Regency period in their time, could be a
Mm,
huge issue. It would sort of like out them because it's not,
right.
no one knows that they do it. And she goes back to collect that, and she accidentally kills the Earl, and of course, and then trying to get this item back, which his brother has, who's now the new Earl. gets herself entangled with him, and he's the hero, and she's obviously the heroine and stuff. So there's that in that they have changed, and they don't really know what they've changed the past, and they don't really know what the effects of that will be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But then she stays, and I suppose I'm not really, because she didn't know of the family in the future. I've never actually gone and thought, I wonder what happened to the family since she accidentally went back and killed him. Like, I've never, it's not something that I've ever sort of thought about, but,
But then also,
yeah,
what happens to the person who goes missing?
yeah,
So, you know what I mean? Like, they're gone. Like, you can only exist in one timeline, I guess. So
yes, well,
when they're
technically,
gone, are they are they missed, or do you
yes,
not address? Yeah, yeah.
her family, because her father, who owns the time, like it's called Time Arc, who do this, he authorizes her to stay, so they know she's gone.
Okay.
And then in number two, her partner, who's an archaeologist, her work partner, he goes back, and he ends up bringing the girl forward. So instead of she staying in that time, which was dangerous for her,
Hmm.
she he does stop. He does change the future for her, because she is rumored to have died. So, um, but what he does is she never dies. She was never found. It was, like in the book, she was supposed to have been killed in this fire, but what actually happened, and they realize in the end, was actually it was him that came back, and she was never found in the fire because she left with him.
Right. Okay.
And so that, even though in history they never knew what happened to her, they do know what happened to her because she went forward in time.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I've never read this genre. Now you're making me more interested, because I guess there's a way to, because
Yeah.
I'm always like, I always feel like this is going to be too hard and a lot of work. And
Yeah.
that's not what I want when I read.
And like in Karen Marie Moning's Highlander series, which is what I fell in love with time travel with reading those. They have like these stones that they're druids. The boys are druids in that family, and
Hmm.
they travel back and forth in time through these stones. So yeah, it's you can do really what you like,
Well,
but
of
you just
course.
you just have to be careful that you explain everything that you're doing in the book, I suppose. But yeah, and book three, I'm trying to think what I wrote in that book, because I've written so many since then that I forget.
But do you enjoy the world building part of it then?
I do, and I really enjoyed going back to that, because it was already all set up for me from book one. Um,
Hmm.
and I made a sort of a pact with myself last year that I would go back and finish off all the series that had tales still left to write. Um,
Okay.
so I finished off my Highlander series work first, because there was only one book left to do in that, and then I finished off my Tamaria Rogue series, the book 4 and 5, and then I finished off book 2 and 3 in that A Stolen Season series, which is this time travel again. And then what did I do? And then I started my new series, which is releasing this year, which is the Wayward Woodvilles, which is just Dead Regency
Okay.
only.
So I feel like every time I look up, you have a new book. Um, it's
Yeah,
like,
I'm mad.
um,
I don't sleep, and yeah, it's terrible.
um, so wait, can I ask you, because
Yeah.
how many books have you written?
Oh, I knew you were gonna ask me that question, and I was like, I should look it up. It would have to be. It would have to be about 50 books. It would have to be, and
Oh my gosh.
surely by
Okay.
now. But I really need to look that up, and then also on top of those, I'm doing lots of translations now and things like that. So it's getting a little bit mad.
It is, because when I met you, it was like three.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
okay.
It was so, and you know that book that I gave Crimson was A Stolen Season, and
Yeah, I'll never forget it
yeah,
because you got it back and then another publisher and then you got it back and then I remember all the reviews. I remember a lot about that book. That book stands out in my
I'm
head.
so glad to get that one back. And yeah, and it's my favorite. I think probably because it was my first, and
Hmm.
um, yeah, and I just love. I don't know. I don't know how. I always worry that like I get worse each time I write a book, and which is so stupid. But I feel like I don't know. You feel like you're getting worse, and but A Stolen Season. When I look back and read some of the things in that, I was like, God, did I write that? Because that's actually quite amusing, or you know, it's quite sweet.
Right.
And I think I was like, I hope I do that with the others that I'm writing. But yeah, and because I write faster now, and I just
You
worry about that.
you are so how are because okay, we talked about writing fast before and I thought you wrote fast before. But given the number of books, what kind of word count are you doing a day now?
So, look, honestly, I have it all scheduled out. So I only have to do about 1,200 words a day to hit my deadlines. So,
Mhm.
because these books are only about 50,000 words, this
Okay.
Woodville series. Um,
Mhm.
so as long as I do that and I don't fall behind, um, I'm fine. But we had like school holidays, we had hiccups at home, and yeah, and then I had to push everything back by a month recently because I just couldn't. I had to put everyone else like kids first and things like.
Right.
I was like, no, I can't do it. I've got to stop.
Mhm.
And but yeah, if I hit about 1,200 now, and if I keep that up, and I'll be fine. So I never try and write two books or anything like that at a time because I've tried that and it doesn't work for me.
Oh, I've tried it. I can't do it. I don't know what you need in your brain to do it, but I can barely get one book done. So,
That's right, exactly. And I tend to I hate when I get edits and I'm writing a book. Like I hate edits on a good day anyway. But yeah, so I've got a deadline of April something. I have to look that up for this next book, and that's on track. And but I literally start the next book the next day.
wow. So, can I ask you how you do that? Because if I don't take a few weeks, I can't.
Yes.
Because
Yeah,
okay, it takes so much effort to finish a book
yeah, I
that
know.
because I do like one full pass and I have to keep an entire book in my head, which is I find very taxing.
Yes,
And then
it
I need a couple of weeks for my head to just relax before I can start the next one. Trust me, I'm
yeah.
thinking about it because I'm a little behind right now, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do?
To get that I know. It's because I'm mad and I stupidly up on Amazon for pre-order. Um,
Right. So,
but also, like, I'm doing this for the Wayward Woodville series. I'm doing a rapid release and seeing if that, works. I hadn't really done it for like a big series before, so I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. But oh my gosh, it's tiring, and I find I nap a lot. Like, I'll
okay.
sit down on the lounge and I'll be like, out for the count. But yeah, as long as I keep my word count up and then I finish. But then what I do usually near the end of the book that I'm writing, you'll find I always write the character in this. There's lots of sisters, cousins, friends that are being written through the book. So you'll characters that you've met, they will get stories,
Right.
and also by the epilogue of the book, you're usually pretty sure of who the next heroine's going to be. Because I always sort of write in the epilogue a scene where something happens that pushes you into the next book. So, and then it jumps from like, sort of like, the next day or a few weeks from whatever happened in that chapter. And then, so that helps my mind also go from
And it does it prep you then for the next because those characters are in your mind at the
us.
forefront, I guess?
Yeah, so
Mm.
whatever inciting incident happens, and then I can go straight into those two. But I'm a pantser writer, so I just make stuff up as I go along. Like,
Trust me, it's my everyday life. What happens today? Don't know. I'm gonna sit in the chair and see.
yeah, that's it. Exactly. I can't plot. I've tried. Yeah, I just can't do it, and I lose all interest in the book if I know what's going to happen.
Same, it's the
Yep,
same, and I
yep.
I love the idea of plotting, and we've all talked about this, and I just every time I get like people send me plotting stuff, and I go, "This is such an interesting idea, but don't you lose interest?" Because I lose interest the minute the book's done. I've lost interest in these people. I'm like,
Yep,
I'm already done. What else we got?
exactly. And, like,
Which is,
um
I think, why I hate edits because I just don't want to revisit it.
no, I don't either. I said to my husband, I say it every time, like, if I could get someone to just do my edits, I would. Like, they can just do it. I don't care. Like, fix it. I hate it.
Mhm.
Like, I'm over it. I'm on to the next one. But yeah, I hate it. And then when they give me hard things to fix, I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
And
I have
no, I
else.
hate it. I remember I think the first edits I got, and she was like, "You need to rewrite something." And I was like, "How?" And she's like, "You wrote the book." And I was like, "Yeah, but this is in the distant past."
That's right. Exactly. I've moved
I've
on.
moved on. I'm not interested in these people anymore. It's really nothing personal, but I'm over it. Um,
That's it. Oh yeah, I'm the same. I hate edits, and I dread them. And my editor, she can be pretty hard, and she's fantastic. But I remember the second book I gave her. I knew it when I was writing it that it was something was wrong with it. Like, I knew, and I kept pushing on. It was like, there's no conflict. Something's wrong. Something's not right in this book. And anyway, I gave it to her, and she came back, and she had this massive thing that I had to change, and I was like, oh, kill me now, like, seriously. Like, maybe I should just shelve this book. But I pushed through and got it done, and I still hate that book. I don't like it, but readers seem to like it. I don't know why. I just sort of look at it like side eye.
So
Like,
I will say this. Have you had this happen to you? So the book that I hate the most,
yeah,
readers love the most. And I fight with it regularly because people email me and they're like, I love that book. And I always want to be like, I hate that one. And so a friend of mine told me that you can't say that publicly. So I will not give the title. She
yes.
was like, she's like, treat them like they're all your children and you love them equally.
This book gave me so much grief. I don't know if I can. But it's got a beautiful cover, and like, that's probably the only thing I like about it. Because it's so hell, but yeah, they
Have
seem to like us. I'm really surprised by the reviews. So whatever I did, however I fixed it, and my editor was like, "Yep, excellent. This is what I want. Yep, yep, yep." And I was like, "Oh, good," because oh my god, that really, I just wanted to die.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Actually, I think about it, I have 2 books that I hate, and one
Yeah,
of them, actually, I think I took off sale for 6 months, and then people were like, "What happened to it?"
was it?
And I was like, "Uh," and I put it back up, but I don't ever talk about it ever.
No, I'm the same. I never advertise it, and I never push it, and I never put it in promos, and yeah, it's so weird, isn't it? And yet on Amazon, it's enjoyed, and yeah, I don't know. It's just it's in my head that it's terrible.
No, and then
No.
somebody once posted on Instagram with a picture of her in the book, and I was like, "Mm."
Oh,
I was like, "That's a stab in the heart," and she's like, "I'm so glad I got this book," and I'm like, "Mm."
what is wrong with you? No.
Exactly. But but alas, I don't say anything. It just sits I do have one copy. It sits on the shelf and we don't talk about it. It's weird.
Yes, yes, I'm the same. Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? Because I think because it can give you so much grief to get it right, and in the end,
Mhm.
yeah, you just, just
No, and maybe so there's some books I love. I mean, I have books that I love and then some that I don't. And I always think, well, maybe one day I'll go back and look at it and like it. But
yeah.
I once went back and looked at the first chapter and I go, oh, I still hate this. And then I really did put it on the shelf and I don't ever look at it. So,
No, no, I know.
um,
And then the books that you love too, which is really strange, like books that you love and you had like they sort of like just flew out of your fingers,
yes,
and
those.
and and people are like, "Well, it's not your best," you know?
I know, and I just wanna be
Bless
like, "But
you.
that but that book, do you understand?" There's one actually I sat down and wrote from beginning to end with no there was no pause. It was the
Yeah,
best writing experience I ever had. I wish I could have it 24 more
Oh,
times.
I know.
Uh, and it was, I want them all to be like that. And I love the book, and people are sort of like, meh. And I'm like,
No,
really? But I love it.
doesn't make any sense at all. You know, I always get right. Really, you'll notice when I really love a book, I'll push it probably more. And
Hmm.
well, I used to. I'm terrible at promotion now, but I used to push it and that, and then I've had that happen, and it's like I'm not doing that anymore because like I'm like love the book, yeah, but some and then but then it's not their favorite, and it's like okay, I give up. I don't know how this
So
works without.
no, the lesson I got from authors who sell much better than me is push the books that people like and just do it like agnostically. Like you have to do it
Yes,
as if you and that's the switch that's well, I was going to make in 2020, and I'm still working. So I actually no
yes,
longer promote the books that no one likes, and that's hard, but I've gotten really good at not doing that. And
yeah,
I'm really working actually to only promote the books that people like. But I feel like I have left and abandoned the child on the side of the road. And how horrible is that? But I as a business person, I understand
yeah,
it.
yes, yeah. That's right. I know. I tend to excuse me. I tend to I don't know, it's something about social media lately, but I go in, throw out, yep, books out, here you go, and then I'm like, because I'm writing the next one.
Right.
I don't do parties, I don't post like everywhere, and I post on my wall and my page and my reader group, and that's pretty much it. And then that's it. And I probably should do way more than that and stuff, but
But
and
I feel like you went through a huge what a period when you did push books. I want to say so. COVID always makes this off. I want to say it was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
yeah,
There was a period where you were just like gangbusters with the promo.
yeah. And I think I realised that it's not where the majority of readers are. So,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, you get a few sales in your groups and things like that. And I always look after um, our readers, like me and Stacey Reed, who's another Regency romance author. We share a group,
Hmm.
a reader group, and we always look after them and stuff. But I advertise with Amazon and I just sort of really just sort of put most of my money there and also um, just with the kids and that like home life and things like that. I've just had to step back from social media a bit and um, yeah, and I think I was promoting so much I was not writing. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then I was like, oh, I can't keep pushing this book because like it's been out for 6 months now. You know, where's the next one? And I hadn't started it. And
Right.
yeah. And so then I was like, yeah, I really need to sort of sit back at the keyboard and do that. That's probably more important. Well, it is more important than, shouting out to the abyss on
Mm,
Facebook and hoping.
yeah, it does feel like shouting into the void. The hardest part I think about this job is that okay, so there's always like the small group of readers who write you that interact with you on a constant basis, but most readers don't interact. So you're selling to people that you never meet and never talk to you, but they do
That's
buy
right.
it, so they exist, and
Yeah.
it's really it's sort of weird. I call it something like the faceless void. Like you get on, like I got on Amazon today. And it's like, okay, well, you sold 300 books. I'm like, to who? Not that I need to know them, but
Amazon
to who?
email addresses.
Exactly right. Who are these people? So it's just one of those. It's a weird disconnect. I think,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
especially in a world where a lot of readers can contact you, but most of them don't.
No, they don't. They don't. And I get some really lovely emails, and then I get some really awful ones. And I've actually now taken off my email address off of my books because I was getting a few like just awful emails.
Do you really? What do they say? Because the only one awful ones I get are people who think that I have too much sex. So
Oh, I definitely get that, or they don't believe the F word was used. Um, in Regency period, even though it's been around since about 1573,
Right.
used in that context. And
Oh, you probably get the historical ones. I've heard, okay, I know historical authors get those ones where people pick apart this very specific things they have feelings about, like reticules or the wagons. I don't even know. All that stuff, I don't quite know what it is. But I know that people are very specific about that. Are those the main sort of things
and
you get?
yeah, mostly it's always like, oh, your book would have been really good, but it's too much sex. Like there's always, mine seem to be always, always sort of
Mhm.
too much open door, and I was like, well, it's no hotter than a Stephanie Lawrence novel was, or the Sophie Jordan's, or these traditionally published authors.
Right.
Um, so it's like if you're reading those, you're reading the same sort of open door bedroom
Yeah.
what I'm writing. Like, what is it? But
Wait,
yeah,
yeah, and I do wonder, can I ask you this? Because okay, this is what I heard, and I still think it may be true, but I don't know. So when I started reading romances, probably mainly in the 80s, I only read contemporary
yeah,
generally. Sex was like, it was, it was hard to get. And it was only like maybe, I don't know, the mid to late 80s when the books got a lot hotter. But
yeah,
what I had always heard is that one of the reasons that historical was popular is because there was open door sex in those books when there
yeah.
wasn't in contemporary.
Yes, and I don't know. I haven't read many what they call, I suppose, bodice rippers.
Mhm.
I haven't read many of them because in the 80s I was like under 10.
Mhm.
Like I just didn't read, and I haven't gone back and read them. I haven't gone back and read them. I have read. I'm looking at a few of my library now that are reported to have written some. Like probably like what's that flame book? I can't remember. I can't see it, but Beatrice Small, I think she wrote
Yeah, yeah.
and I've read some of hers, but even so, like even now, like I still don't see it as like they're just as hot as what you've got now.
Yes, but that's huge considering in contemporary, they
Yeah,
were very chaste. There's lots of chaste kisses and a lot of closed doors,
which is really funny.
and
How you read some of the contemporaries and it's like, holy smokes, like
very much. It's just, to me, it's so dramatically different
oh my
than the
gosh.
way it used to be, but,
I don't
and
get like you get that it's like a Jane Austen mentality that they
yes.
just did not do that. But they did, people, they really did. And they were more sly than you think. And like some of the sex clubs in the Regency era that were around,
Mhm.
um, well, they'd be clutching their pearls, like honestly. But they don't believe it.
But I always look at people and I go, we didn't get to 7 billion people just like, by happenstance.
That's right.
I mean,
Exactly.
somebody had to be doing something.
That's
And then
right.
the other one is people are always like, I will get emails, well, I want a book that my grandmother can read. And I was like, well, the way my grandmother became my grandmother is that she had sex. So I don't know how your grandmother became your grandmother,
That's right.
but that's how mine got here.
I always cringe because my mother, I never knew my grandparents, but my
Mhm,
husband had, he's still got his grandma um, now, and she's actually staying at my mother-in-law's house at the moment. But Bev, my mother-in-law, gave her some of my books to read, and I remember I just like, oh no, don't, like don't do that. And she came and she loved them, and it was like, who are you? Like,
but she had children somehow.
we loved
So
them.
men.
And there's another lady in our little town, because there's only about 400 people in our town,
Mhm,
that my mother-in-law looked after. She's 102 now, but she's still alive, and
mhm.
she's read all of my books, and she loved them as well. She was like, "Oh, if you got any more, bring them down,"
You're like, I'm only writing 1,200 words a day. Give me a minute.
But like I cringe because I know what's in them. But
Right.
and I always sort of think like, oh, they won't want to read that, but they love it. Keeps them. Oh, yeah, she was like, oh, a little bit of spice never hurts anyone. And then
Exactly.
these other women that email me, and they're probably my age, and they're like, "You're ruining the Regency. Like, how can you do that?" And Oh.
Oh, but so many of them have sex. I mean, I guess there are 2 kinds. The ones with sex, I have read some. I mean, I've read probably maybe 20 in my life. But then there's the other ones that are a little bit more like humorous, turn of phrase, those kinds
Yep,
of books.
yep,
Like more like drawing room dramas or
yeah,
comedies, I guess, which I like well enough,
yeah,
but I like a turn of phrase on TV, not so much in a book, I don't think.
no.
And it's not for me, not in a romance. It'd have to be
Oh,
a different kind of book.
that's
Um,
right. Yeah, and that's where I love Bridgerton, because
mhm.
it's sort of like it's showing people, well, what it was really probably in a lot of ways what it was like. They would have had situations like that where they would have accidentally been alone, and
Right.
I love that. I love how they've made the Regency a little sexy, like, because all the Jane Austen ones, like, you're killing, you're dying for them to kiss, and even
Yes.
though they don't kiss in the books, like, until they're married, but like, you're just going like, oh, like, they've made this story in the 21st century, and they still are keeping them, chaste and apart, and it just drives you nuts. Like, kiss already, do something.
Yes,
Okay, you didn't write it, but come on, give us something, And that's what I love
exactly.
with Bridgerton, is that they've gone right there, they've done that, and it's like, yes, payoff, finally, you know?
So what do you read now? Or do you have time to read? I hope yes. But what do you read now?
Yeah, I try and read every night, and I usually fall asleep with my phone. I read off my phone, which is terrible, but my writing on that is huge. My husband reckons I'm blind. It's massive, but because I can't wear my glasses to bed, so the writing on my Kindle is huge. Um,
Right.
um, I read. It's funny. I read a lot of historical. I won't read time travel. I never read time travel ever. I
Mhm.
couldn't even get through Outlander. I love the show, although I've stopped watching it because it got a bit dark. Um, but like, I loved the first season of Outlander and that, but I actually have never read any of those books. And then,
Okay.
so I won't read time travel really at all. And then, except for Karen Marie Monings years ago, when before I was writing. Um, but I read a lot of, like, historical romance. I love Sophia Jordan. I always think she has great characters. Um, and then in the indie world, like, I read all my indie mates' books, like Scarlett Scott and Stacey Reid, obviously. Read all her books because she's fantastic. And um, I sort of like, yeah, I try and read, but I've got so many now on my Kindle, like, app,
Who doesn't?
and
It's
then I fall
awful.
asleep, and it takes me ages. Like, I've got so many to read. I'm way behind, but usually it's Regency. But then I did recently go through a stage where I saw. I think her name's Ivy Smoke or something like
Oh,
that.
Ivy Smoke, yes.
Yes, I saw. Her book was doing really, really well. It was like getting a bit of chatter and that and that. I was like, oh, I'll go and read that, and I devoured that whole
Oh, yeah, yeah.
series where that he was a professor. I can't remember what the series is called,
Yes.
but oh my god, I I could not stop like reading that, and so that was really nice because, and actually it sparked my, like, as I was reading that, I was like flying through my book because it was so hot, and it was like, this is going to work,
Yeah.
this is inspirational. This is gonna, yeah. So I just devoured that whole series, loved it, and yeah, and that was really good. And then and now I'm back on Regency again. Just
Ok
I keep like, yeah. If I don't read during the day, I fall asleep really quickly at night, and then I wake up and I've marked a heap of stuff on the Kindle thing, where my fingers sort of slipped across there.
yes. That just happened to me
Missing
today, but
this.
we're not gonna talk about it. So wait, why is it that you don't read time travel?
I don't want. It's funny, but I don't want anyone to ever say that I took an idea from anyone who's already written it, like in their stories and stuff. But really, at the end of the day, there's only so many ways you can go back in time, by touching something, or they make up a time traveling device, or um, but yeah, no, I've read a few really early, like, traditionally published time travels. Um,
Mhm.
Constant. Constance O'Day O'Flannery, I think her name was. O'Day
Okay.
Flannery or something like that. She used to write. Well, I don't think she writes anymore, but she had some really good ones out and stuff. But you see sometimes, I don't know, you see reviews and people are like, "This is such a like out." You always get Outlander rip-offs and
But I
stuff,
mean,
and
okay, but I always believe that there's only so many ideas in the world. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
I mean, there's so many ways to couple people or meet cute or break them up or, you know,
yeah, that's right, exactly. And it's just your take on it that
right.
is how it's changed. I remember I got a review on Defiant Surrender, I reckon it was, which is my medieval time travel, and they said she's a Diana. Is it Gabaldon or
Gabaldon, yeah.
Gabaldon? Um, a wannabe, and so stupid, isn't it? That all the negative. I've got hundreds of positive reviews, but these negative ones stick in your head. And
They always do, which is why I
yeah,
try not to read them. I really do.
I've definitely made an effort to not look and stuff. As long as my overall is quite good, then I'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, the book's fine. Um, but yeah, and so I have a tendency now. I don't know. I don't. It's not my favorite to, other than Karen Marie Moaning. I haven't really found time travel books that I just like devour
Hmm.
and really love, and so I've sort of like, no, I like straight up medieval probably more than, or Scottish than the time travels. Um,
Right.
yeah, so that's, yeah. I don't just, yeah. It's funny, but I just don't read that genre really. Yeah, I
Is
haven't had years.
So is there something okay, so you've written a lot of books, with girls with pretty dresses, but
Yeah.
is there something that you think is a fairly common theme across the books that you write?
Oh golly. I love like I love the enemies to lovers trope. Like that's probably
Oh,
uh
we have to talk about this. Why? It's the one I refuse to read. Because no, because okay, so if okay, if it's done well, okay, maybe not well. Sometimes I read them and
yeah.
I hate one or the other of them as the other person has seized them, and I can never get over it. I'm like, well, I still hate him. I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
yes. But my heroes have never done anything that's not redeemable. Like they've never cheated or anything. Like I won't go there. But
Mhm,
maybe so my last book was enemies to lovers, because she found out he was saying, all these requirements he wanted for a wife. She sort of fell for him at
mhm,
first, and then she overhears a conversation with him and his mates, um, and all the women at this house party don't know that he needs money, but they also don't know that he needs money for actually really good reasons, like
mhm.
um, but he can't also tell anyone those reasons, because that in itself could sort of ruin him in society.
Right.
But so she doesn't know that, but she overhears him saying like, "I need a rich wife," and these three women are the contenders, and she's not on that list. She's not there, even though she's an heiress, and but he doesn't know that either. Oh, there's lots of secrets, obviously. going,
Right. I
but
deal with secrets.
she sort of fell for him. He was being very nice and friendly because he's friends with her now brother-in-law, and so she's sort of like upset by that. And then she hears this, and then she gets offended by that. And so they become, there's a lot, and with the enemies to lovers trope, I love that banter um,
Mhm.
between the two. There's lots of arguing.
No, there's
And
banter and chemistry, but I
yeah,
still end up
yeah,
disliking one of them.
yeah. I just love that they butt up against each other with everything, but then they can't keep their hands off each other either. Like,
Right.
and even though they know I dislike you, but want to bang you.
Right. So wait, then what other tropes do you enjoy? Okay, because my favorite is actually friends to lovers, because I love the idea that people have known each other for a long time, and usually one of them is pining, and then
Yeah,
the other one finds out. Love those books. Can't get enough of that.
yes. So I've written friends to lovers as well. Um, and what other ones have I written? Um, like I've written a book where they were already in love and engaged, and then there's a scandal which separates them. Um,
Hmm.
but then also I've written like secret pregnancy,
Hmm.
um, which is challenging in the Regency, and I got sort of put over the coals with some readers on that one because the child that she has, she's made, like in the Regency period, you don't really have a choice. If you're a duke's daughter and you're pregnant and then you
Hmm.
can't marry the guy that has, you've slept with, um, they did. They were like, right, we've got to get you married, and
Right, because you
who
gotta
would be?
legitimize something. Yeah.
We cannot. This is going to ruin everyone else in the family, and
Hmm.
we need you married ASAP. And I got. She had the child. She married someone else. She had the child. That child was a boy, and he became the heir to this man that she married. But he knew all of that. He had he wasn't able to have children, which no one knew,
Okay, right.
and so he was more than willing to help her. And even though he passes because of his accident he fell off a horse, he knew all the truth to her, and um, she loved him because of that. And then the child that she bore, which wasn't his, but he couldn't have him anyway, but at least his name went on and he was quite happy with that. And
Right.
then the hero comes back and he's mad as hell because he finds out that his child has another person's name,
Right. Yeah.
another title. But he also, in that scene, like they had tried to contact him and they received a letter back from him saying, no, too bad. But it wasn't actually from him, it was from his uncle who didn't want him to marry her.
Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Okay.
And so,
That's better.
but I got like pulled over the coals on that because the baby, God forbid, the baby didn't have the right title in the end. It was supposed to be this guy's title and not the other guy's title. But it was like, well, did you read the book? Because, and if you know anything about historical romance or that time period, there women didn't have a lot of say in what they did. It was really,
A
you
lot of men around them who had a lot to say.
what to do, and then that, and it was like, gosh, you have to sort of put yourself back and remember what era you're reading.
Do you find okay, so do you find the constraints of the history and, women's position to be something that is interesting to write in because you have to write like inside a box, or do you find it difficult at all? Because to me, I find it difficult because I just want women to be able to say and do what they want, which is why I don't write
Yes.
it.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's probably like also my women say and do whatever they want anyway. Like even if that people don't know they're doing it, they're doing it. Like
right.
so they're
You mean the way women generally have been able to operate throughout history? I mean, to get what you want, you had to.
that's it.
It was a lot of work.
It is, yeah. I like it, but um I like I like pushing it. Now, I suppose that's where the women, like, they were like strong. Always often get like strong character for the women and stuff because yeah, they never ever are they meek and mild women. These girls might act prim and proper in a
Mhm.
ballroom,
Right.
but when they're talking amongst themselves and things like that, or they're not around their parents and or siblings or whatever, yeah, then the truth really sort of comes out. And I like that you sort of see, okay, she behaves herself here, but then over here she's like, oh, not so much.
So, can I ask you, since you're not British, what is it? Have you ever considered writing novels about Australian history? I've read a few when I was young that I loved, and I always wonder why there aren't more. Although maybe it's like American history is only like there's not that many years to go back through.
Yeah, yeah. um it's funny, isn't it? I have thought about it because I grew up in a small mining town not far from actually where we live now. um And I have thought about it because that little town has been around since, I don't know, 1840s or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I have read a few. I used to have like a critic partner Jo Duncan, but she's passed away now. She had MS, but she wrote Australian historical,
Mm-hmm.
and she was brilliant at it. She loved it. She brought in a lot of the historical things that happened, white women coming over to Australia, and then they were forced to
Yeah.
marry and
Yeah.
work on these farms and things like that. But yeah, for me, I've never sort of, it's never really interested me. I don't know why. I have thought about it, but then I was like, I haven't got the passion there behind it. I love, like, London is one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there a
Mm-hmm.
few times, and I always feel like it was really strange, but every time I fly into London, I feel like I've gone home, like I've returned home.
Mm-hmm.
A really odd feeling. And so I just, yeah, the passion, like I love Australia, like I love Australian history and everything like that, but I don't particularly, I like, I suppose because I grew up in a country town, um, yeah, and I can't see anything romantic in it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, not being out in the dusty outback is not so
it's
romantic.
like, yeah, that's it. We swam in dams, we swam in green tanks, tanks that had like slime on the side growing, and that because I grew up out on a station for a few
Mm.
years and things like that. And I was like, oh no.
No, I wonder. I think about it sometimes because I also don't read American historical, but there are also
Yeah.
a lot of women who were like out in the Midwest, like working
Oh
hard, which is not that
God,
a
I know.
you know.
I just sort of think like and that's it. You go back 200 years. You go
Mhm.
back, 150, 200 years in that town.
Right.
No, that's not romantic. That's
It's
ew.
hard. It's just
I
hard.
hate it. And always just when I read them, Westerns or Australian historicals and that, all I can think of is because in Australia it gets really hot, and I know they didn't have air conditioning then. And I just sort of think like this, I would die. Like if I didn't have my air conditioner now, like I'm really grumpy. If we lose power through summer, I get really grumpy because it's so hot. And then you sort of put that back 200 years, and these poor women, they had to cook inside. They had these ovens, these big wood burning ovens, and
Oh
it's like,
god. Yeah.
oh God, no. I'd be like, that's it. I give up. Like, no.
Yeah, but maybe when they left the oven, the 40-degree heat didn't seem so hot.
Oh no. It's just mad. And you sort of, yeah, no, no. And and it's the same with like people have asked me why I don't write rural romance,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
this time period of that. And it's like I grew up in country towns with those boys who are supposed to be these heroes, and it's like, no, no, yeah, no, they're not hero material for me. I couldn't write them. It'd be so fun.
Mhm.
No,
So thank you so much for doing this interview. It was so great to talk to you, especially I haven't talked to you in a few years.
no,
So it's so great to talk to you, and thank you so much for sharing about your writing and your process with my audience.
no. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
This has been A Time to Thrill with me, your host, author Aime Austin. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll share it, rate it, and give it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Reviews will help other listeners find my conversations with brilliant creators. Also, please hit the follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. In addition to hosting this podcast, I am the author of the forthcoming Nicole Long series of legal thrillers. Outcry Witness and Major Crimes are available for pre-order. I'm also the author of the Casey Court series of legal thrillers. They are available wherever books are sold, at your local library, and also an audiobook. You can follow me on Instagram at ThrillerPod or on Facebook at Legal Thriller Author or at A Time to Thrill. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next month with another great conversation.